everybody. Welcome to another version of Bill Roden. I'm Bill Roden here in Indianapolis, Indiana, where I've been covering the NBA Finals between the Oklahoma Thunder and the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers, by virtue of an exciting win yesterday, have a 2-1 lead. They've called this the small market NBA Finals, but the basketball is pretty good. So I'll ask my friend and colleague holding it down in Brooklyn, who's a basketball junkie, what he thinks about the finals. Murph, what's going on?
Not much, Bill. Good to see you. Glad you're having a good time in between Indiana and Oklahoma City. Which one's the better time?
Oh, brother.
I mean, I'll take it back. I don't want you to disparage any of the cities that are participating in this finals.
Yeah, as Rasheed Wallace said, both teams play hard.
Right.
Remember he made a T-shirt? I mean,
Yeah.
In fact, I just ordered the T. When I get back to New York, it should probably be there. But
That's
said
nice.
both teams played hard. In fact, I'm looking forward to getting it and wearing it when I get back to Oklahoma City. I have my suit on and say both teams played hard.
I like that. So in this case, it's both cities tried hard. I'll
Both
say that.
cities tried very hard. I mean, Oklahoma, I guess, is probably a smaller market than, though we went to a great restaurant in Oklahoma City. It's owned by this brother, this chef. It's called the Black Walnut, and it's really, really good. And he actually owns three. The Green Sleeves he owns, and then he owns a hotel in the Severin Hilton Hotel. That's really, really good. Good brother. Now I got to think of.
Is that the you put a picture up? It was Mark Spears was there.
Yeah.
David Aldridge and some other people.
No, that was a hotel in Indiana, here in Indianapolis called Country Kitchen.
Oh, okay.
But the one there, me and Mark and Sheila Matthews, we've been recording.
Oh, I saw that.
We got this series called Anscape at the NBA Finals. It's kind of part of our Anscape at series. We did Anscape at the Olympics. Now it's Anscape at the NBA Finals. I'm sure we'll probably have Anscape at the World Cup. So
that's coming soon. Yep.
That's right around the corner. But I thought both cities are fine. I've written a few columns. One about what basketball and the Thunder mean to the locals in Oklahoma City, and interviewed a few black folks, a chef, a woman who works for CVS, and a woman and a guy who is a PR executive at Southwest Airlines. And they all talked about, what the Thunder means to them. And tomorrow, I spent yesterday afternoon with Oscar Robertson, the great Oscar Robertson, the Big O.
Oh, wow.
And he was in his suite here in Indianapolis. And that piece will run tomorrow. And then tomorrow morning, Mark Spears, Sheila, and I are going to go to the Crispus Attucks High School gym and do a podcast there in the gym. Crispus Attucks, of course, was where Oscar Robertson played high school basketball. And they went to the state championship 3 times as a sophomore, and they lost to this team that the movie became Hoosiers.
Right.
But it was a little off because, as Oscar pointed out, as he will, that team, although the Gene Hackman version had like an all-white team losing to these a lot of these tremendous, like Julius Erving.
The white team winning.
Yeah, but there were black guys on that team, but they did not. That wasn't good for the story, so they kind of left them out.
Wow! So they whitewashed the story.
They whitewashed the story.
Whitewashed. That's unbelievable. I like the movie. I don't. In retrospect, I don't know.
Yeah, I've got a yeah, but it was wrong. But Oscars, I didn't even I didn't even watch it.
Right. Okay.
You
That's
know,
good to know. That's a
um,
good to know for sure.
yeah, yeah. Oscar is quite the critic. I mean, people I know really his reputation. They go Oscar the Grouch.
Right.
You know, but Oscar's 86 years old, and like a lot of folks, man, black people over I don't know 60 years old, and if you grew up in the South, there's so many things that happen to you, and that people will tell you now, well, yeah, that was then, and we have progress, but for the people who endured that, you still have those scars there, you know, and
Right.
I think that I know, white people particularly probably say, well, come on, get over it, it happened, and many of them did not have to deal with that kind of basic degradation to your dignity,
Right.
you know. I mean, everybody in life has to go through something, but being black in America, then there's another layer on top of that, witness what we're going through now, you know. So, yeah, so Oscar, I give people grace because he says, you want me to go around smiling and not critiquing, but, that stuff happened. And sure, the nail's gone, but the hole's still there. So
Right.
we had a good conversation. So what are you thinking? You're a head basketball coach and you're high school hoopsters. What do you think of the series?
Basketball wise, I think it's been okay. I think obviously the third game, Indiana wins that third game to take a 2-1 lead. I think that was the best game of the series. It was close.
Right.
You didn't really know, who's going to pull it out. Indiana pulled it out. The two games in Oklahoma City. I mean, Oklahoma pretty much dominated most of those two games except for the very end. And I will say that last 2 or 3 minutes of game one was unbelievable. I was watching it from a different lens this time,
Yeah.
watching Halliburton and kind of rooting for it to happen. Whereas when it was the Knicks, I was rooting. I couldn't believe it. I was upset that it happened. This time, I'm rooting for it, and he does the same thing that he did to the Knicks in Game One.
Yeah.
And then
Except the ball didn't bounce all the way. It was like a straight.
right, but as a team, Indiana pretty much did the same thing, right? They were down double digits, come back at the end out of nowhere. They did it. They also did that to Cleveland. So you cannot. I mean, I know it's a cliche. You can't count the team out, but
No.
but this one you really cannot count the Pacers out of any game. That they're within about 12 points in the last couple minutes. So
Yeah.
no, it's so I think the series just basketball wise has been a little uneven. The blowout in game two, but a good game in game three, and I'm anxious to see what happens in game four, and if the Pacers can pull it out, take a 3-1 lead. Because the other issue I have with this series and the narrative has been that everybody just picking saying OKC was going to win this. It was going to be an easy series. Most people have OKC in 5. I didn't understand that because OKC hasn't been perfect throughout these playoffs, and the Pacers have been good on the
Yeah.
East. So I'm kind of happy that the Pacers have made this a series.
Yeah. What do you think that's about? I mean, I picked the Pacers in 5. I mean, I picked
You picked the Thunder at 5?
OKC. Yeah, I thought, I had lost a bet with Mark Spears, which, Mark Spears is one of these gourmet guys. I hate to let him choose a restaurant,
Uh-oh.
But I thought that OKC was going to win 2 games here,
Mm.
He said it would be a split. Now, after, yesterday's game, I don't know, man. I mean, if OKC goes down 3-1, it's quite possible that the series will be over in 5, but not the 5 that we thought. Because to go back to OKC with the Thunder trailing 3-1, that's formidable. Because they got to win there, and the Pacers proved they can win in OKC, although it's like on a last second shot. Then even if OKC wins that, they got to come back here.
Right.
So I think tomorrow will be a grueling series. But I must say, I mean, I think the NBA. I mean, I think all playoffs that I follow are pretty good. I mean, I don't follow the hockey playoffs, so I did watch parts of the NHL All-Star game the way they did it. I think they had nations playing against each other, and that was pretty intense, particularly when you just oppose it against this foolishness that the NBA puts on an All-Star game, like But I think All-Star. I mean, the playoffs, the best of players are always great, whether it's the World Series or the NBA playoffs. Because invariably the best team is going to win. It's not
Right.
like the NCAA tournament where you get hot, the
Upsets.
team gets hot, and you just have one off night and it's over.
Right. Right.
Well, here you could have an off night, but then you come back for game two.
Right.
Then 3 and 4, and it is a grueling. It's a grueling format, and particularly going back and forth and all that. So yeah, basketball wise, it's been good, and with the Knicks have made it better. I don't know. Who knows?
Probably not basketball wise. It might have really
Anyway,
been. It probably really would have been OKC in 5,
yeah,
at the most.
right. No, you're right. They would have run the Knicks in the ground with Thibodeau there and playing
Yeah,
4 people.
and then turnovers. The Knicks turnover problems. It would have been ugly.
Yeah,
They'd have been down 30
right.
at OKC.
Yeah,
So whereas Indiana was able to keep it close. But no, I mean, I do wonder what it was. Why everyone was so heavily on the OKC bandwagon. I guess it makes sense. I mean, they were the number one seed coming in. But my thing is, they pretty much dominated Minnesota. But prior to
right.
that, they struggled with Denver, and they were kind of in a similar position, I think, against Denver. I think they were down 2-1 going into Game 4 at Denver, and they pulled
Yeah,
that game out. So they have a similar task here, and I wouldn't be surprised if they pull out Game 4 and even the series. I picked OKC in 7, just still thinking like OKC was a little better, but that Indiana would give them a real series based on what they did leading up to this. I mean, they beat the number 1 seed Cleveland. Remember that? I mean, in 5 or 6, I think it
to
was
beat the hell out
6.
of them,
Yeah,
and then came and had a
right,
remarkable comeback.
right. Remarkable comeback. Then they beat the favored Knicks. They in the first round they beat Milwaukee and Giannis. So this team is tested, no
Yeah,
doubt about it. And,
yeah,
but I think it is telling that OKC, yes, they lost Game 1, but they were winning that game double digits most of the game, and then they pretty much blew them out Game 2, and then Game 3 in Indianapolis, where OKC doesn't play their best game, it was still close. So
yeah. It
that
was
may
still
say
close.
something about OKC being the better team.
Yeah, and I guess when you've got a guy like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, which I wanted to ask you, what do you make of Halliburton? I've been going back and forth. I think everybody's been going back and forth. I think on one of our other podcasts we talked about this, about star. Remember, I was reading the definition,
Superstar,
superstar, and all that. I think we decided that
that he was not.
superstar had nothing to do necessarily with performance, but it had everything to do with popularity.
Right,
Uh, are you a globally recognized icon?
right,
You could be, just because you're an all-star doesn't mean that you're a superstar. We agreed that stars has to do with performance, and even megastar has to do with performance. But when we talk about superstar, it has to do with your kind of popularity. But having said all that, what do you make of Shea and with it wasn't particularly Halliburton?
I mean, Halliburton, he's a great. I mean, Halliburton's a very good player. I think he's a very, very good player. Um, he's he is what he is, right? I think he's a very, very good point guard. Averages about 18 and 9, but I think that's what he is. So is he a guy that's can he consistently get you 30? No, and he shows that throughout series. But in a big game, he's capable,
Right.
right? And he's showing that he's a big game player. Like even Game 3, I forget what his final stats were, but he came out like after a Game 2 where he didn't put up big numbers at all, and he's been doing that all playoffs, like having games
Right.
where his numbers aren't great, but then in the big games that they need, he shows up, right?
Right.
And it doesn't matter if it's home or away,
Yeah.
right? He shows up and he's aggressive. I don't think he's capable of doing that every game, but he does it in the games that matter, and you have to give him a lot of credit for that. As for Shea, great player also, but I don't think he's a superstar in terms of, I saw Magic Johnson say something today on First Take. Uh, Stephen A. asked Magic Johnson, what's a superstar?" And Magic had a good answer. He said, "A player who can sell out the road arena by himself."
Yeah, yeah,
Like everybody wants to see.
everybody wants to
Same
see
thing.
it.
Same thing we're saying, right? It's
Yeah,
about popularity. It's about people just having to see you and that type of thing. And then so Shea's very good. I don't think he's a superstar yet to that level, but I mean he's a great player. I was looking this up the other day. You know, he averaged about 31 points a game this year, and people, he's kind of new on the scene, right? Shea Gilgeous-Alexander as a superstar, kind of new on the scene. This is the third straight year he's averaged 30 points, over
yeah,
30. So he's been doing this.
right.
He did it 3 straight years. This guy, he is what he is. He is this good. And I think it's the third straight year he averaged 30 and shot over 50% as a guard. So this
Yeah,
guy, I mean, he is legit. He's and you were talking about me coaching young kids. He is a guy that you can look at you point to young kids because he's fundamentally sound. He stays low. He knows how to use his body. Great footwork. He's not the most athletic guy, so
he's a
he's
foul merchant.
he's a foul. It's a foul merchant.
I never even heard. How we just come up with we just make sure he's a foul merchant.
He's a foul. That's a new one. That's a new one, Bill. That is a new one.
Foul merchant.
Oh man.
Somebody, let's say a foul merchant. Is he selling? It's like fouls here, fouls here. Get your fouls here.
And even with that, I can't. Well, sometimes I watch him and I'm annoyed, but I'm more annoyed with the refs who call it rather than like that he can bait, like he can initiate the bump,
Right.
Fall back and get the foul. I'm more annoyed that refs call that, and he's nowhere as near as bad as James Harden was.
Well, Harden was terrible.
Yeah, like Harden would take his arm, put it under another player's arm. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's even worse.
Right.
So,
gaming the system.
Yeah, it is part of the game. We all know that. Just like remember back in the day, it was the charge, right?
Right.
Duke
Oh,
Duke
yeah.
made that. Like now, then everybody was just flopping and taking charges. So
Yeah.
it's part of the game.
Yeah. No, it's always something. But you're right. The foul merchant thing. I don't know. Although on game 3, I think he was only at the line about 6 times.
Right. Game 3, they did not call it. They might have gave him 1 or 2 of those calls, but there were a bunch of plays where he usually gets that call from every game I've been watching that they refuse to give it to him. And we'll see, but it all depends on who the referees are. Is it going to be the same call in game 4 when OKC needs the game? Right. I don't know. Will it be the same call when they're back in OKC? Probably not. He's going to get those calls. So, we'll see.
Why is that? To me, that's the thing. And it gets into another discussion. But that stuff, I don't know, more of the NBA, but the way the fouls thing, we call the game different from game to game. There's a refereeing during the postseason, right, and then the regular season,
which is totally different. Totally different.
Yeah, it's like a different game entirely. And then who gets calls? Or here's another crew. That means this. I don't know. I wonder if rather than have different crews for each game, if they just should assign one crew for the series. Just have one crew officiate the entire series. At the very least, have the crew do it when they're in Indianapolis, have another crew doing it while they, so you kind of know who's reffing and the call and the style, you pretty much know what you're going to get,
Right.
So I don't know, maybe they feel that it's part of the challenge is to like on the golf course, change where the hole is or something,
Right. And they do it the exact opposite, right? They make sure that a different crew is reffing as much as possible. You never see the same crew ref two games in a series in a row. You will not see that.
Do you think that's good or bad? Do you think that they should just have the same crew reffing a series?
I don't know. I mean, I don't. It's interesting. It's an interesting question. I never really thought about it.
Mm.
Now, what about ref fatigue? Are they worried about the refs getting rest and being
Right.
being sharp, so they don't want them to do back to backs? I'm
Right.
not
Maybe that.
sure.
Yeah, you're right. That
You
could be part of the rest. You have a fresh crew. For each game, you have a fresh set of legs and eyes.
and I'm pretty sure because I know Zarba. He got game two, and I would bet you don't see him again at least until game 5 or 6.
Ah,
So I think they have at least three crews maybe for the finals.
yeah, yeah. So I guess that's just a thought, but
Hmm.
just the it's just wild. Maybe that's what makes the NBA the NBA, that is not consistent. You
Right.
know,
And no
uh,
matter and no matter what they did, you'll have the NBA conspiracy theorists saying that the game's rigged. No matter what, if you had
right,
the same refs the whole series, they're gonna say it's rigged. If you have different refs the whole series, they're gonna say each one of these guys is rigged in some way.
yeah,
I see it all
yeah,
in
yeah,
text chats on Twitter. Like no matter what, and the funny thing about that to me is like it doesn't matter what happens, right? People like with the Knicks and the Pacers. They say
yeah.
that the refs are rigged. They want the Knicks in the finals, but then when that doesn't happen, it doesn't stop people from saying it's
But
rigged.
it's still red. They just blew the red.
you know, so
Man.
I don't know, man. The NBA will never, and I don't understand why it's just the NBA that gets this rep because you look at the NFL. You talk about calls
Right.
that are
Holding all of
subjective.
a sudden.
Hold pass interference can change the
Right.
whole game at the end of the game, and
Right.
that's like a subjective call. You don't hear in the NFL's rigged. You don't hear it as
Right.
much as you hear the NBA.
I've heard a little bit of it.
A little, but not like the
Not as
NBA.
much as you hear in the NBA.
Right.
In baseball with the balls and strikes is kind of just as bad. I know they're
Yeah.
talking about you going to the electronic strike zone.
I
Have
don't. I don't.
robots.
But I don't want that either. I don't want the electronic strike zone. Even
Why not?
though, but don't get me
Isn't
wrong. When
that
I'm watching a Mets game and they put that little box in,
right?
and they don't and they miss a call, I am pissed. I'm like, it's outside the box. But at the same time, I don't want just. I do kind of want to keep that human error, that human element.
Well, yeah, but with more and more gambling, that's the thing. They want the officiating to be perfect, but the player's not perfect. Players drop passes, they miss blocks, they bobble passes, they miss layups.
Right.
That's the improvement. But they want the officiating to be perfect. So I don't know. So we'll see. So what's your prediction? I mean,
Oh
I was getting
wow.
on them. I was getting on them to ask me that. So why? You asked me. I don't know.
I saw that video. I'm going to stick with my prediction of. To be honest, I'm rooting for Indiana for some reason. I don't know why. I have no idea why, but
Yeah.
I'm going to stick to my prediction of OKC in 7. I see. I think OKC played pretty. They didn't play a good game, and they've been known to bounce back. They've done it on the road. Where coming into the playoffs, I wasn't all that. I didn't really believe in Oklahoma City because they just had Shea Gilgeous. I was wondering about if Jalen Williams was really a number two, like a real number two option on a championship team. But I think they kind of proved that to me throughout the playoffs that they have had big games when they needed it. So I kind of think that they'll win this game for tomorrow night, even it up at 2. Then Pacers get 5. No. Then OKC gets 5. Pacers will get 6, and they'll win it in 7. That's what I think will happen.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure going back to conspiracy theory, that's what the league wants. League wants the network. Yeah, let's go 7.
Right.
I can never work out, even if you say it's true. How do you work that out? Do you have to get a player to go along with it, or
Right.
is the officials go? I mean, who sits in the room and schemes it out?
Right. And it's just like I said, we're like, yeah, they want we all believe, right? Conspiracy theories. Oh, they wanted to go 7, but if the Pacers win in 5, it's not going to stop us from saying this. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. Like we could continue the conspiracy theory next year. We're just gonna, it doesn't matter what they do. people are gonna say it. People are gonna say there's that it's rigged. So
Yeah.
I just can't go along with it. Unless I have to see some real evidence. Give me some real evidence that it's fixed, and I'll believe it.
Yeah. So as we wind this down, what else we got? I agree with you. I think if Oklahoma City wins tomorrow and they tie the series, they steal the game. They steal home court advantage back,
Right.
and going back to game 5 on Monday. I think it's tough. I thought that Oklahoma was just a better, but I've seen Indiana. I saw them against the Knicks,
Right.
and with the comebacks. I guess I want to put this as a referendum on Halliburton, and I don't know if we're seeing he's a different kind of star, that he's the kind of guy a star that needs the rest of his team to play well.
Yeah, no question.
And he will do what he can do to make them play well. Like last night, who's the guy who scored a game high 27?
Benedict Mathurin.
He came off the bench and scored 27.
Yep.
Halliburton played well. I mean, he scored 23, but maybe and Robertson, Oscar said something like that he's the kind of guy that he needs other players to play well. Maybe he can't carry the whole load by himself and go out there and score 45 points. Although he has done, I mean, he scored, there have been, I guess, a couple games where he scored, 30 something. So I just think.
Yeah, no, I think he's just a hell of a point guard. Like, I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, great, on the verge of becoming a great player. Even last night, like I said, he was aggressive, but he, 22 points, but he had 11 assists, 9 rebounds, right?
Right.
So he did a little of everything. And obviously was the main reason, his team won. So he has, he gets credit for that.
To play the game, in order for you guys to clamp me down, it creates weaknesses, and I know what those weaknesses are.
Right. Unselfish player. Right. He's going to give it up. He's going to make the right play. He's really going to make the right play. And then if you get to the end of the game, I mean, the guy is as good as I've ever seen. Like, at least this particular run, I've never seen anything like that. Where, I mean, he has 4 game winners, like 4 or 5 game winners in big games in each series. Right?
Milwaukee. He had the one. The Knicks, he had the one.
Knicks, Cleveland.
He had the one.
Cleveland, he runs out to the.
That's right.
He runs out to the 3-point line, hits that, and then this one, like, I mean, it's and you saw it with this one. There was no question who's getting the ball at the end of the game.
Right.
There is no question. Like, you're giving it if the Pacers have the ball, he has to have the ball in his hands to take the last shot. There's no question. So you have to give it up for that. It's like nothing I've ever seen.
Yeah. Now I respect. Well, I know people tell me, "Do you really respect him?" I mean,
I respect him. I mean, I don't like him. Like, as a guy who was rooting for the Knicks, he was annoying with the choke sign. He's a little corny to me. But there's no question on the court. Like, you have to respect him. Like, if you don't, he'll so let him kill you then. If you don't respect him on the court.
Well, I'm sure the people coach against him do.
Yes.
So as we wrap up this section, you were a Knicks fan. What do you think of the Knicks coaching staff? Have you gotten a call from the Knicks? Do they want you to coach?
They haven't given me a call. It just shows that they don't know what they're doing.
I missed the call. You don't know, but what the hell,
Right. So I mean, but they get rid of Tibbs. I know everybody has their own opinion about whether that was the right thing to do, but it just doesn't make sense to me that I'm kind of agreeing with people who say they should have had a plan coming in. Why get rid of him if you have no clue what you're going to do? And it surely looks like that, right? They've been contacting teams to ask permission if they could speak to Jason Kidd and Ime Udoka, and so when they did that. Those two, I get that. And even if you knew that you couldn't talk to them, it's a smart PR decision, I think. But then when you basically request to talk to everybody and they deny you, now it looks like you just don't know what you're doing.
Right. Let me get this guy. All right.
When I heard they want to speak to Billy Donovan, really?
Yeah, Billy Donovan.
He hasn't done anything since Florida.
They're desperate. But it sounds like it was a firing of passion. And if it was a firing of passion, that probably goes up to the ownership. When something
Right.
happened, he just said, get rid of this guy. I don't just get rid of this guy.
I
And he
mean,
said,
it reeks of Dolan. There's
yeah.
no question.
Jim, I don't care. Just get rid of him. But we don't have it. I don't, listen, I'll get rid of you if you don't get rid of him.
Right.
So,
Right. And that's the
now
culture there, right? So
yeah.
yeah, so I guess he didn't like him. I'm not really buying the whole, oh, the players, they in the exit meetings, they were unhappy. Who cares? You know what I'm saying? Like who are they listening to? There's only one player that they would listen to, and that would be Jalen Brunson. And Brunson is a Tibbs guy.
Right.
And Tibbs hired his father on the staff.
Well,
Okay.
so that leads to the question. I know that this whole drama. They said, well, his father had too much power. Players are saying, his father had too much power. So the next guy is at a condition of being hired that Brunson got to go. And then Jalen said, well, he goes, I go.
And remember, Jalen took less money, right? He took like a deal on his contract to stay there. And I'm sure, wouldn't you think doesn't it make sense that part of the reason he took a deal is because his father's on the staff? Doesn't that make sense? Like, oh, if ever you're going to take a discount, well, I mean, I'm playing for my father.
His dad, he gets there, and his dad works out with him before the game.
That's true. That's true. But he's the best player on the team, so it's not like what Brunson, his father's telling Tibbs to put the ball in his hands or something. No, that's what you need to do anyway.
Right.
So, but I mean, that's true too. Like, is he out of a job also?
Yeah,
Brunson's father.
But what's that dynamic like? If it depends on who the coach is. Now, if the coach is Udoka or some established coach, he might have the juice. Yeah, listen, I don't want that guy on staff. I don't care what you say. Right. But now that all the top coach, and also, what about tampering? You can't do that with players. You can't go around and say, hey, we're trying to get permission to get Jokic.
Right.
But it's okay to tamper with coaches. It's not okay to tamper with players.
Right. It's a mess.
Yeah. So anyway, last but not least, man, before we get out of here, what do you think of your boy Aaron Rodgers finally signed with Pittsburgh?
I don't think much of it. I mean, we went through this. We were covering the Jets. He was there. Nothing really came out of that. He's older now. He had, but I mean, if I guess it's possible he could play decently, and Tomlin's still going to get to the playoffs. I have some confidence that Tomlin could use him correctly. I don't think he's going to put up some huge numbers or anything like that, or he's going to be an MVP or anything like that. But he might help them. I do take offense at them saying that they're better off than they were last year when they had Fields and Russell Wilson. We'll see.
Two able-bodied,
right, right. So, and I'll just go back to my Fields diatribe. I still think your guy Tomlin. I love Tomlin, but I still think he made a mistake not giving Fields a real chance there. Yeah. But guess what? Do you know what Week 1 game is? The Week 1 Jets game is?
What, Pittsburgh?
Yep, Week 1.
Oh wow, we got to be there. Yeah. Where is it? In Pittsburgh or New York?
Good question. I got to look that up.
Wow.
But they definitely play each other. They definitely play Week 1. So Fields has to go face Pittsburgh and Tomlin, and Aaron Rodgers faces the Jets.
Wow, that's great. Can't make it up. I got to get credentialed for that.
Oh yeah, no question. Yeah, no question. So I mean, Aaron Rodgers, man, I'm just not. When I first saw that, and then I see ESPN talking about it the entire morning and day and night, I was just thinking, don't Aaron Rodgers me to death. Right. But they will.
Well, yeah, we'll see. But it's the hype leading up to it is going to be ridiculous, and the game itself. And who knows? Maybe it's a good game. But that's I'll be there. And then Cleveland, of course. We'll all wait to see whether Shador, whatever. And I guess now Shador has that thing that if for some reason he was to get the starting job, he might be a person where when Cleveland goes on the road, people may come to see him.
Yeah, yeah,
or to hear him.
yeah.
You
Or
know,
definitely watch him
yeah,
on
what
TV.
Shador, and a lot of that too. Remember, is wanting to see somebody fail.
Right, right.
You know,
That's
that's
true. That's
you
true.
know,
It's like a Mayweather type deal, right? Everybody
right,
hated him. They wanted to see him lose, but he played to that.
right, and he didn't. He just kept winning. You know, so
Right. So yeah, Shador. Yeah, I mean, football is always the greatest. In terms of storylines and well, I think they're in mini camp now. When does preseason start?
I don't know. Sometime,
August, probably before August, probably like late
yeah, I thought
July.
it was July, but maybe
Yeah,
August.
yeah.
You know, uh,
So
yeah, I'm counting the days.
yeah, man.
You know,
And
this
and you
NBA
still
season
you,
is
you
really
still you
long.
still have the Lamar Jacksons to talk about. You still Josh Allen,
Yeah,
and I'm like I said, rooting for the Jets. Aaron Glenn. He seems, everybody's swearing he's the best leader they've ever seen.
I
You
know.
know, and you always hear that preseason, but
I know.
even Justin Fields said and I just thought about this yesterday, but like a couple weeks ago, I was there, and Justin Fields said someone asked about Glenn, and he said, "Well, I mean, he's the realest coach I've ever had. Like just the way he talks to me, he's like the realest coach I've ever had." And then I just thought about it recently. I'm like, wait, he was with Tomlin last year, so that's
Right,
interesting.
right. Well, he was a realist goes at before up until now.
Right, right. So
So we'll see. But it's all great now, and everybody's 0-0.
right,
You know, we
right.
wait till it's December, and you're like 0-7. You know,
which we've seen plenty of times.
yeah, and then it's very stale, very quick. You know, so we shall see. All right, man. Well, why don't you give us your spiel about?
Thanks to the listeners. Find us wherever you listen to your podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube now, hit that like button uh, and share it and subscribe and all that good stuff. Follow us on social media at BrosPod on Instagram and Twitter. Bill Roden on Sports on Facebook. And, we'll be back soon. Bill, who you got? So who you got game 4? Game
Uh,
4 in Indiana? You're out there?
I'm here. I don't know. That's why I'm here. Find out who's gonna win.
That's true. That's true.
They forced me to make a prediction, so I said, okay, Oklahoma wins 2,
Well,
and then
so now
now.
you gotta say they at least get 1 now. You
Well,
can't
yeah. I mean,
back off.
what am I gonna say? It's gonna be Indiana. I said, no, I mean, they got to win. They got to win. Then they got to win Game 5 as well.
Right.
It's like Ali once. Ali was famous for predicting fights. And once he predicted, he was on this thing with this Alan King's comedian who didn't like him, and he was like on the Johnny Carson show, and he had predicted that he was going to knock somebody out in 10 rounds. No, he was going to knock somebody out in 10 rounds or something. I forget what it was, but it didn't come out. He said, then the guy said, he said, well, wait a minute. First I said 4. Then I said 6. Well, 6 and 4, 10.
Right.
And the crowd went dry, and the comedian, Alan King, his face turned red. This guy. Right. He said, first I said 4, right? Then I said 6, right? Well, 6 and 4, 10. And the crowd, the audience, and the guy is Alan King. He just, white comedians, but he's he just remember who did not like Ali. You could tell he didn't like this guy. He said, oh, guy, you said you were going to knock him out first and 4. Then he said 6, and then he knocked him out 10. The guy said, yeah. I said, well, first I said 4, then I said 6. Well, 6 and 4. I said 10. I remember, and the guy's face was red. Well, it was black and white TV, but but he was just enraged. And I just remember, this guy.
The great Muhammad Ali.
The great Muhammad Ali. He was a superstar.
Yeah, no question about that. Well, I'm going to take, like I said, I'm rooting for Indiana, but something tells me OKC in a real close game. They pull it out somehow.
Yeah.
And then
the atmospheres have been very intriguing.
Which has been the better home court advantage in your opinion?
Oklahoma City they're both weird because they got these things where everybody wears the same colored shirt. It's like a cult. Then Oklahoma starts the game off with a prayer. That's the only team in NBA that does it. They have a guy. and then they do the national anthem. So they just layer it on, you know. So I'm thinking, well, I guess and it's very Christian. So I was like, what happens if you're like Muslim or something? I guess you just, yeah. So, but I think, but it's a spooky environment, you know. So I guess Oklahoma City might have, you know, but I think if you're a losing team, it doesn't matter what you have on, you know. You can everybody can wear. I
That's
think
true.
Dallas does that stuff too. They have the same color T-shirt.
Wait, Bill, you don't put the shirt on when you're out there?
No,
Can't do it.
I'll take one to bring back to the rec room with the shirt.
That's true. How you feeling about the that national anthem right about now? No comment.
No comment. Listen, I'm just as American. That's my flag too.
There's my flag. I can do what I want with the
My
anthem.
father and grandfather.
Sometimes I like the anthem. Sometimes I don't. I'm an
Well,
American.
I mean, the idea is that I know a lot of people, even with the American flag, I think the problem is that we have kind of what's the word, allowed people to
Right.
what's I'm not
To take ownership or
yeah
something.
to co-opt it,
Yes.
and you know where we have just as much blood in the soil
Or
as anybody else, more blood in the soil, you know,
Right.
more blood in the soil, but
Right.
people have kind of got it and made it a symbol they made it a symbol of something that does not include us.
Yeah.
And so to
Or
me,
a symbol of nonsense. You know.
yeah. And I
So
think who defines that? And I
right.
think that we have to do a better job of defining that. Say, no, man, this country is, no matter what bill of goods you've been sold, this country is as much ours as it is yours, maybe even more so.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So
We've been here longer.
yeah, any longer and endured a lot. If you listen to
Right.
Oscar's story and
Right.
you know, I mean, there are a lot of stories about what we put up with,
Right.
you know, and then you know, forgave you, you
Right.
know. So
And I would say to Oscar, tell your story, and I'm sure he will.
yeah,
Like,
no, he wouldn't. No, trust me, he will. Oscar will
yeah.
tell.
So no, yeah. I mean, people need to hear it. Like you said, a lot of blood in the soil. We've been through a lot. People need to know it. But, no matter how much they try to whitewash it.
Yep, yep. And with that, we'll say good night. And good luck.
Yeah. Good luck to us.
Yeah, good luck. I know maybe we do need to pray before the game.
Right.
We're all praying for different things, though. I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. Tell me about it.
All right, man. But that's a perfect segue. Pray, everybody. Keep praying. God bless, and we'll see you. Maybe depending on how the series works. Well, but next week.
Yeah.
All right, everybody.